Welcome to the Writing Gals. We are four sweet romance authors staying up late as we talk about writing. And tonight, though, we are missing Amy. She is not feeling well tonight, so she wasn't sure if she was going to make it. But we are excited to talk tonight about writing endings that will sell your next book. But before we get into that, we wanted to just kind of give an update of where we are at with our writing. So, Victorine, do you want to tell us what you've been up to this week?
Sure thing. I'm still launching my book, Don't Bet on Love, and it's doing great. I'm super
Doing
excited.
amazing.
Yay! It's climbing the charts. I'm so excited. And I'm working on my next YA, which is part of the Sweetwater series that I'm doing with Michelle and Amy and Judy and a bunch of other authors. So we're all part of this really cool thing we're doing, and it's all set in the same high school, and we're using each other's characters, and it's super exciting. So I'm working on that and just loving it. It's awesome.
Cool. I'm excited to read your book. From what I know about it, it's going to be lots of fun. And what about you, Michelle? What have you been doing?
I have been writing like a mad woman, trying to sort of wedge a book into my busy schedule because I didn't want my contemporary readers to go for too long without a release. So I released my Regency just about a week and a half ago. And it is doing well for me starting in a new genre. It's picked up the last couple of days. I've been really happy to see that. And I'm going to be releasing another Regency in June. So I'll just keep building on this slowly over time with, maybe 2 or 3 releases a year. Then I'm working on Saved by the Billionaire and having way too much fun with it. And I got stuck in a rabbit hole of research because I needed to know more about super yachts, and they are really interesting. And so now I'm dying to write a whole series based on set on billionaires' yachts. Awesome. So I don't know what's gonna come of that, but I'm really wanting to do that. But I'm gonna control myself and finish my Sweetwater next. And then what do I have slotted after Sweetwater? Oh, the next book of my mermaid series. So that's why I needed to get the contemporary title out, because I'm going to do Regency, contemporary, young adult, fantasy, and then So anyways, I'm just a little bit crazy.
One busy lady. I don't know how you keep all of those different genres straight and all those books. I have a hard time just working on one book at a time, so that's awesome. Oops, I just knocked my computer. Okay, so for me, I finished my book, Kissing the Boy Next Door, finally. Been working on that since November or December. I take a long time to write those books, it seems. And then I've been also working on my game app. So that's been fun too. And I'm excited to get more into writing my reader magnet finally tomorrow. So that's what I have been up to. Is Victorine frozen for you, Michelle? I'm wondering if my internet's just being slow.
Am I weird?
Oh, no. Okay.
She's okay.
Okay. Am I sounding okay? Because I'm guessing it's my internet that is the slow one. Am I fine?
You sound fine to me.
Okay. Hopefully it will stay that way. Okay, so let's get into tonight's questions. We asked our Facebook group for questions on writing endings, and so we will just get started with the first one. So the first question is, do you find it easier to write scene by scene from opening scene to the end, or to write the ending first as a way to figure out the plot?
So for me, I write scene by scene from start to finish. I'm very linear in how I write. Pretty much that's what I do. Every once in a while I'll write and then I'll go back and add a scene, feeling like, there needs to be a bridge scene here or there or whatever. But for the most part, I write from start to finish because I like that tension and those feelings to grow over time. And I like to know where I'm at in that scale as I'm writing a scene. And if I skip to the end, I feel like I'm messing up that growth. So
yeah, I feel the same. That's what I do too. The one time I tried to write a book out of order, it took me 4 years to write that book. So I don't really do that anymore because it's not a good thing. I do outline the book so I know a lot of the ending. Basically, romance, they end up together. That's pretty much the ending. I don't know.
Right.
So, but that's pretty much as far as I go with that.
So yeah, I write from start to beginning, or no, from start to beginning. That wouldn't get me anywhere. To end, scene by scene, and I kind of have signposts along the way, like things I want to get to, scenes that I want to write that are kind of like hallmark moments for me throughout the story. But the important thing to realize is that even if you do like to start with the ending or start in the beginning or middle or mix it around, the important thing is that you don't have to, you don't have to write your perfect beginning and your perfect ending in your first draft. So however you write it, I almost always go back and rewrite my first chapter, because when I get to the end, I like to have them cohesive, working together, reflecting, tying each other together. And I can only do that if I go back and edit. So for me, it's not so much where you write it in the draft or the order, but how you go back and edit. That's where the magic really happens, in my opinion.
Yeah. And with that, I'll just think about the beginning as I'm writing the ending and try to find a way to kind of mirror it so I don't always have to go back and rewrite the beginning. But that is a good point that you make about doing that. And then I had another thought that came to me as you're saying that, but it kind of left my head. Oh, one other thing that I remembered when we had Jennifer Nelson on here, she talked about when she's writing her books, she'll come up with like 5 different possible endings and then choose from there so that it's kind of she'll get the best idea for how to end the book, which I think is a really cool way to do it so that you're not just picking the obvious ending for your readers. Okay, so next question is how to keep the momentum going, or how do you keep the momentum going until the very end? I get bored with a lot of books I read at about the 3/4 mark, and it makes me paranoid that I'll bore my readers. The wrap-up is not my fave. Maybe give examples of books with killer endings. So how do you keep the momentum going through the whole book? Any ideas?
I just like to create tense moments, and I like to reveal stuff along the way. So I usually try and set it up so that there's something that the reader doesn't know about, some backstory, or just something that I weave in that's kind of a mystery that I want them to keep turning the pages to find out what exactly that is. And so it can be all kinds of things that you can kind of weave in. And then that to me creates a much better emotional connection between the two characters. If there's some kind of backstory that they're not talking about, and then they do finally share that, when they share that, it to me makes the characters come closer together. So that's one thing I do. Another thing I do is just make sure that I like to really end each chapter on something that makes them want to turn the page. So kind of trying to read through books and try and figure out what people are doing to make you want to turn the page, I guess.
Yeah, definitely keep some sort of mystery that is not solved until the very end is a great thing. I like that.
Just another thing that can be sort of a trick is make your chapters shorter towards the end of the book. Yeah. And the readers may not even realize that, but it makes them feel like, oh, I'm getting through this chapter fast, and just I'm so into this, and turn the pages, and you can artificially give them that feeling by simply shortening your chapters. And it's amazing what that can do for your pacing. And I also like to give it a little bit of a sort of a less of an arc, if that makes sense. So in the beginning of my book, or especially through the middle, chapters kind of have their own arc to it. And you can plot them just like you would plot a story. But when I get towards the end of the book, I have fewer resolution type things happening, if that makes sense, until I get to the like story questions that I need to tie off at the end. But for like this short little period of time right before like at the 2/3 mark of the story, I start just really amping up tension, suspense, just keeping them going and going and going, and not giving them a lot of like cool down, reflective kind of moments or scenes.
Yeah, I think that is a really great point. Just don't let that tension die. So, and then at the end of the question, she says, Jess, if we have any examples of books with killer endings, anyone? I know we'd all want to say our own, but they probably don't want us to say that.
This is totally putting me on the spot, and my phone is dead, so I can't look at my Kindle app to think.
Maybe we'll come back to that if we think of something.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then, so kind of the opposite of that question is, how do you avoid rushing your endings? Which is super hard when you want to just finish the book.
One thing that I will do sometimes if I feel like I'm rushing the ending is I'll go ahead and rush the ending, and then I'll go back and add more in. You know, I'll be like, okay, here I kind of jumped from this to this. How can I slow this down? What is this character thinking right at this moment? You know, and I go back and add more thoughts, more feelings, more senses, more just stuff to make it so it doesn't feel so rushed.
Yeah, that's what I do too, because sometimes I just am ready to be done, and all of that, and just like I'm just ready to be done for the day, I guess. So I'll just finish it and then come back later, just like you.
So it's funny because I'm doing this right now. I'm trying to figure out if I'm rushing my ending right now, because I have 2 more chapters and an epilogue left in my story. And so what tends to happen for me is that I have these things that I think are going to happen, and this is where the story is going to end. And then all of a sudden my characters do something funny, or the tension just gets to a point where I'm like, whoa, how did we get here already? Like, we're there at this point, and it would be stupid for me to not resolve it. You know, like it just, all of a sudden everything just happens. And I think that you also have to pay attention to your instincts that are telling you that it's time, you know, and don't artificially push the ending back, because that's when readers get frustrated. That's when things can, you know, start just being added in there for length, and readers can feel that. Readers can feel when the author is drawing something out longer than it needs to be. So it's a really fine line that you're always trying to balance between whether or not you're rushing it or whether or not you're following your instincts. And so I always go with my gut. And then if I get feedback from beta readers or editors that I went too quickly or they needed more information, then I can go in and flesh it out more.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that. Okay, next question. I have a prologue in my second book to tie first and second book together. Would it serve me better to make it an epilogue in the first book? And my answer is I'm not sure. I'd have to read it to know. But also, I guess, being if it is a series that they do go together, then I don't know. It's probably fine to have it at the end, maybe if it's not too big of a cliffhanger. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
So if we're talking about a serial, like where each story leads into the next and it's not a standalone, I'm trying to think of fantasy series I've read where book 2 had a prologue Did she say if the first one did? Because it seems to me like if you're going to, it seems to me like if you're going to have a prologue in a series like that you're going to want it on the first book and not on a book in the middle, because it seems like it would mess with your reader's sense of time.
Mm-hmm.
But readers are always happy about an epilogue. So without reading anything or knowing anything about the story, I think my just quick answer is I would probably do it as an epilogue to the first book, because having a prologue in the second book when it doesn't match the rest of the series, as far as like every book having a prologue, which happened in The Wheel of Time, then I would not do it in book 2.
So does it sound like she's saying she wants to catch the readers up with a prologue on book 2 to what's happened before? Is that what she's saying?
Well, it just says that she has one on the second, a prologue on the second book that helps tie the first and second book together. She was wondering if it would serve her better
To me, that kind of says, here, I'm going to catch you up as to what you missed in book 1 or what happened in book 1. And that to me is really tricky ground, because you don't want to bore the readers who have already read book 1 and make it just like a laundry list of here's what you missed. So I'd be really careful with that kind of thing. What I would do is go and read some of these really successful series and see how they started book 2 and book 3, and see how other highly successful authors did it and try and do it that way. Because I really don't think you need a whole prologue summing up what happened in book 1, because all that is backstory now. And you don't do that in just book 1 when you start, at least you shouldn't. All the backstory needs to be sprinkled in. And so
so if it's backstory, you don't want that. If it's like brand new, like look what's coming next in this story, then and I don't know which way I would have. You might want it as an epilogue if it's going to like excite people to read the next book. So
I was going to say, if by chance it is a series of standalone books, then I would say definitely use it as an epilogue, because its only real purpose at that point is to excite people, and you're not going to need to excite people who've already bought the second book. You're going to need to excite people who have finished book 1 so you can get them to move on to book 2. So if it's a series of standalones, then absolutely 100% do it as an epilogue and not a prologue.
Yeah. Okay. The next question. Let me see. Okay. So this kind of goes along kind of a little bit of what you were saying. Writing the epilogue in the point of view of the protagonist from the next book in the series is confusing to me. If you could touch on that, it would be helpful. And I know Amy has done that. We need Amy here. Have either of you done that?
I haven't done it. Since Amy is so enthusiastic about the results she's getting from it, from her readers, and we've seen some of the reviews where people get really excited to get the next book simply because she introduces the character for the next book in her epilogue. It certainly seems to be creating a lot of buzz for her. So if it's a matter of technical know-how as to how to do that, you just through the book, you've got point of view of your main characters that you're going either back and forth on or sticking to one, however you're doing it. But when you get to the epilogue, you're going to have a third point of view from somebody that was a character in the first book that you've met, but you weren't inside their head. Mm-hmm. And in the epilogue, you're going to be in their head, and they would be able to give you a different perspective on the story you just went through, kind of give you a new spin on it, but also it's going to give you a hint about their story goal or their story question, something that's going to hook you into wanting to know what's going to happen in their story.
So I tried this in this book I just published. I tried it.
Oh, okay.
And here's what I did. I don't know if it's the good way or the right way, but this is what I did. So within the story, I introduce a character, and she's a side character. And at a certain point in the story, I kind of hint at what her what her plight is going to be in the next book. So she's this side character, and she's complaining because she got put together with the bad boy at the school on a project, and he's got to help her with it, and he skips school and isn't there sometimes, and she's just really frustrated that she got paired up with this kid. And so I kind of introduce him just a little bit. I tell just a little bit about him in that scene, and her just being really frustrated. And then at the very, very end of the book, I do, in the epilogue, I tell it from her point of view. Now, all of my epilogues, I always try and tie up loose ends, and I try and show my couple as a happy couple. And so what I did was I had the new character with my happy couple sitting there. So the happy couple, I was able to look at the happy couple through my new character's eyes. And but she sees this school bad boy character walk in the lunchroom, and she runs after him, and she's like, I need to talk to you. We need to get together to do this project. So I have a little interaction between the two of them at the very end of the first book. And then I say, to get this next book, click here. And it leads to my website that says coming soon, the second book in the series, because I haven't started it yet. But but I have gotten quite a few clicks on that link. So I'm hoping that that's a really good lead through into the next book, and I'm hoping the sales will be good.
Yeah, that's the way that I've heard it done. So I think you did it just right.
Yay.
So everyone do what Victorine did. And like for adult ones, I've read one where like the sister of the guy was at his wedding because he was the main character in that book, and so she was watching them get married or whatever, and then she's like, oh, when's it going to be my turn, or something like that. So just kind of show that they are wishing for love, but then they're seeing the other couple. Oh, go ahead.
So the trick with doing this, I think, is that you need to have a very connected series to be able to make it work, because you can't. It would be really weird for a reader to jump into some stranger's head, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Even if they just were mentioned or introduced, it would be really awkward if they were just thrown into this strange character's head.
Yeah.
And so if you have a series like Amy's, or all brothers, or they're friends at a school, and you get to know their personality a little bit and become invested in them, then it works a lot better than if your series are completely standalone and aren't connected, or like the series I'm currently working on, where there's just a thread running between all of them. And so I thought about doing it for the series, and I just felt like none of the characters for the next book were, close enough to the main characters or well fleshed out enough for the readers to have connected to them very much. So in mine, I don't use the epilogue, but I do, as the series goes on, my readers are learning, hey, I'm going to start paying attention to anybody that comes in through the story that kind of passes through, because they might be the person in the next book. And I've had readers starting to respond back that they know that, like, oh, I'm going to read the movie star book next, or I bet it's the billionaire. Da, 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 da. And so there's ways to connect your readers or lead them through, even if you don't do an epilogue in a different point of view. But it is a really cool thing to try, and that seems to be doing really well.
Yeah, and I like what you said about just making sure that it fits with the story that you're on, because story is the number one thing. You want to make sure that it makes sense to have it from that point of view. And like with me, I haven't ever done it in another character's point of view, but my books are all connected because they're all at the same high school, but I still have readers asking, I can't wait for this other character's book to come out, because they know, like I introduce it through the main characters. They notice these things about their friend, or you still get enough of their story to know that they're going to have another story after that. So, okay. Let me see. The next question is there a preferred time jump for okay, sorry, let me read that better. Is there a preferred time jump for epilogues? I've got one at 3 months after the happily ever after, and one set at a year ahead. Is that too far? Do readers mind?
I've done all kinds of time jumps. So I've done a short time jump and I've done like years ahead. And I think whatever fits your story is what you would do. I haven't had anybody complain about any of them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've had one set like
Yeah.
a week later, and then others months, and then others a year. So
I feel like artificial is my word for the night. How many times have I said it now? But if you were to always have your epilogue exactly 1 year after your book ended on every single story, it would start to feel really like cliche and overused and boring, right? So you definitely need to tailor it to whatever works for your story. And here's my big thing with epilogues. Readers love them, especially in the romance genre. They love to be able to just have a glimpse of that couple living their happily ever after. But the real kicker is you have to let it resonate with them, that it has to fulfill some other purpose besides just, a window view into their future. You need to have some kind of a thread that you need to tie off, some kind of theme that you need to just, repeat. And that's how I always try and decide, number one, if my book needs an epilogue, but number two, what the epilogue is going to be. So for example, in The Truth About Billionaires, there's always like, if you're writing a romance, do you have them married? Do you do the proposal scene? Do you show them pregnant? Do you do this and this and this and that, right? So in that one, I thought really hard about how I wanted to do that epilogue. And I decided they were going to be married sometime into the future. But instead of having her like finding out she's pregnant or something like that, I was going to have her find out that she was not pregnant, which is like the twist on the expectation. But the reason I did that was that the whole theme for her throughout that book was whether or not she could choose to have a family over her career. And so the epilogue was her realizing that she was disappointed that she wasn't pregnant. And that was when she knew that she was ready to start thinking about having children. And so she and her husband have a conversation. Okay, well then let's make this work. And that, to me, tied off her big story question that had not been completely answered by the end of the story, where they, decided to get married, they loved each other and all that stuff. There was still this thing floating around that I needed the reader to feel satisfied about. And that's the way I answered it. If your epilogue can't accomplish something like that, then I would challenge you to look more at how you're writing your epilogues. And if you can figure out how to make it meaningful, then that will tell you how much time should pass, or when you said it, or all that stuff. Give it a purpose. That's what I'm saying.
I like that. Any more thoughts on that? I can't remember if Victorine talked about it. I think she probably did. Okay. Next question is, in a series, is it necessary to have a recap of other books before the current book? I'll say no.
Yeah, I would say no. Go ahead and just start it like you're starting a brand new book. Like that's where the story starts, and work in that backstory as you go. And if people want, if you make it interesting enough, the backstory, they're going to want to go back and read the first book. So,
yeah, definitely, that's what I say too. Okay. So then the next one is another on epilogues. Are they really needed, or are they more like a little extra frosting on the happily ever after cake? I think we kind of went over that. But...
I think I already spouted my opinion on that, so I'll just hush.
Okay. So yeah, I don't think they're completely necessary. I've written a couple books that don't have them, but they are nice too. So just think it through and decide what's best for your story. That's what I say.
Yeah, I have my first book I published. I have a happy ending, but I didn't epilogue it with here they are as a happy couple, and I had some people get mad at me for that. So I always do them now with my romances, because I want people to feel like everything's tied up.
Yeah.
But I don't think you absolutely have to if you can give them a satisfying ending.
Yeah. And I know the
Yeah,
ones that I
so-
didn't do it on, are in a series. And so you see those characters later. So I'm like, that kind of counts as their epilogue.
Yeah. So I was going to say that's exactly what I just did with mine, where I didn't do an epilogue after my second in the series. And my third book opens up with basically what would have been that epilogue, but in a
Mhm.
different character's point of view. So,
And it is harder to do an epilogue with a happy couple with YA, because with
Yeah.
adult romance, they, they're starting their life together. They're married maybe, or having a baby, or some happy, thing is happening to them. So that's completely different than in YA. So YA doesn't as much lend itself to that.
They're not always getting engaged, although I did have one couple get engaged, but I was like a year later and they were kind of older. So it was fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you try to allude or give carrots to your readers about the next book in the series? I think we've kind of gone over this too, I guess. Yeah. So I think that's a yes answer. And then how many words for epilogues? I've read ones that are 3,000 words long and ones that are 300 words. I found 3,000 to be too much tell, but the 300 left me wanting a little more. I just wrote one today that ended up at 1,871 words. So that seemed like a good length to me. What do you guys think?
I always try to shoot for 1,000 to 2,000. I probably have a couple that are really short, like 500, 600 words, but most of mine, I would say, are around 1,000 words. That's kind of what I shoot for. But again, it's more, you want to give a satisfying ending, but not make it too drawn out.
So I usually stick around the 1,000 to 1,500 mark too. And then in my Regency that I just published, it was actually a lot shorter. And it's because my epilogue was actually a love letter. It wasn't like a story, which was very meaningful for the story itself. But that meant that it was short. So anyways, it's just try not to put too many strictures on, a story device that you need to make work for you, right? So you don't feel like there are rigid rules about epilogues. Everybody's always worried about if they're doing epilogues right. And epilogues are right if they work. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to say because what works? But they can be any length. They can be any length of time away from the story. They can be any character's point of view as long as you do it well. So, I'm just going to get up on my soapbox again and just say, what does your story need? And what will enhance your readers' experience? And what will make them remember the story long after? And everything else, is just up for whatever creativity you want to throw at it.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
I was just saying it. You go ahead.
Judy and me, we're just jinxing each other.
We're probably going to say the same thing.
We probably
anyways.
are, because we're, so within each other's minds right now. I was just going to say, if this is your first or second book, you may not know what the story needs, because that's really great advice to give the story what it needs. But if you're not sure what the story needs, get beta readers, get critique partners to read it. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, get outside opinions. Just like Judy and me.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay. The next question is, when it comes to endings, what are your thoughts on characters moving in together in sweet romance? Or does there need to be a ring for that to happen? This one's tricky.
I think there needs to be a ring if you don't want to have bad reviews. I mean, that's the long and short of it. I mean, if you're writing clean romance, you're just going to have to understand that a huge part of your market is going to be made up of people who have, very strong opinions on the subject matter. So whatever your feelings are, or whatever you think your characters might do, you can have them do that, but just be aware that you will likely make a huge segment of your market unhappy with you. And if there's not like a driving reason to do it, which I'm sure you could maybe think of one, but it just seems like, why alienate people who will go on to read all of your other books if there's not a, really critical reason for it to happen?
Yeah. Yeah, because the readers do definitely have certain expectations for the characters to have certain things they abide by. So good to follow your genre expectations, even if you don't necessarily, think that the same way. Any other thoughts on that? No? Okay. And this is the last question that I have. Can you talk about whether or how you use bonus epilogues as a cookie to entice people to join your newsletter? I've heard some people mention that as an effective tool for every book, but then I'm not sure about the logistics of sharing them all with readers who are already on my list. So I think that's a interesting idea. I think that could be fun, because a lot of, like, if the readers really love the story, they don't want it to end. So that's another, just a good way to give them something extra. So I think that's, I would do that if I had time to write another epilogue.
I think it's a great idea. I've never tried it. So I can't give you any, advice on how to make it work, but I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. I would just use it at like the end of my book. Say, now, if you want the extra epilogue, here's go to this link, and you'll, and then just kind of use BookFunnel or something, just like you would for a reader magnet.
Yeah, and see, I've seen authors do this with books that I was reading, and I've never yet been tempted to click on it. Yeah. And so, it's not going to cost you a whole lot to do it and try it. Maybe you'll get some readers. But to me, if the first epilogue was good, then I'm happy. And if it wasn't good, then I'm not wanting to read anymore. Yeah. So it gets really tricky to keep pulling them on, for extended epilogue things. I think personally, I would be a lot more interested in doing something like a deleted scene, or the first chapter of the next book. That's probably something that would be more interesting to me.
We could write fake bloopers. Here are the bloopers of the story.
Yeah, for me.
Oh my gosh.
For me,
have you seen that? I think we have different, I don't know what I'm looking for. Our internets are at different speeds. So I think there's a pause and there's not. I was going to say the Barbie movies. Have you seen the Barbie movies that have the fake bloopers with the animated Barbies, the acting bloopers that they did in the movie? Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll shut up now.
And that's what I've used, because I don't have my reader magnet yet, because I'm going to work on it tomorrow. But that's what I've used to get people to sign up for my newsletter, is just using deleted scenes, and I've gotten a good amount of subscribers that way. So if you don't want to do the epilogue, maybe try that.
You can even write deleted scenes.
Yes. Okay. And are there any questions on the live feed?
Nope, we didn't have any tonight. Okay. We have lots of people watching, so thank you for watching us.
Yeah, thank you all for watching us tonight. If you like this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our next ones. And we will be on here again next week with a really awesome topic that we'll think of.
And if you want to hear more on story endings, I'm actually teaching a class on it at the Nebraska Writing Guild conference, right, Victorine?
Yes, it's April 12th and 13th is the actual conference. The 11th will be our writing retreat, and it'll be in Omaha. And if you want to know more about it, we can put a link at the bottom after we're done publishing this, and it'll tell you more about the conference. You can come see Michelle's class. I went to her class at a different conference, and it was fantastic. So you don't want to miss it.
Awesome.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. So thank you for watching us. We will talk to you next week. Thanks for staying up late.